Gwen is now one of the weakest champions in the game after her nerfs. Morgana is now an S tier champ in 3 different roles, and are the off-meta junglers who got buffed this patch any good? Let's talk about it in today's video as we provide you guys with an update to the solo queue tier list for every single role. And it's no secret that League's ranking system is designed to trap you. It pulls you in with those games where everything clicks and you carry hard, only to balance it with frustrating matches that feel unwinnable from the start. This cycle keeps you grinding, hoping for change but never quite breaking through. What most players don't realize is that escaping this cycle requires specific skills and strategies tailored to your exact rank. That's where SkillCapped comes in. We're the only service in this industry that has invested millions of dollars into identifying what actually works at every tier. Our challenger coaches have mapped out the best and most useful strategies that turn hard-stuck players into consistent climbers, and you can access all this expertise for less than $9 a month with our annual plan. We're so confident in our method that our business model depends on your success. Climb at least 5 divisions while actively using SkillCapped, or claim a full refund, no questions asked. Stop wasting time on the ranked treadmill. Start climbing today with proven strategies designed specifically to break through your current rank. Check us out by clicking the link in the top right corner or in the description below. And with that being said, let's get into it. So one of the bigger meta shifting changes of the patch was Gwen becoming a borderline unplayable champion for solo queue. Gwen ended up losing about 2% win rate from her nerfs, and it's pushed her down below 47%. Gwen has been one of those champs who Riot has had a really hard time balancing for both solo queue and pro play, because even when she's in an average spot for solo queue, she can be pick or ban in pro. So for the time being, it's best to avoid playing Gwen unless you are a one trick of the champion, as we are placing her down in the top lane C tier. For an update on top lane Kayn, he's received a few mana buffs to his Q and W this patch, and we were optimistic that he would turn into at least an average top lane pick, but so far it's looking bleak. Top lane Kayn just has a really difficult time going head to head with many of the meta fighters, and although you can try to get a proxy going with him, it's easier said than done for the average player. The thing about proxying on Kayn though is that it's a bit counterintuitive for how his kit works, because you need to be fighting enemies to get your form, and if you're just proxying all lane, then your form will come in much later than you'd like. So overall, a pretty difficult champion to make work up in the top lane right now. Tank matchups are where he'll have the most viability, because you can whack away at them without worrying about taking too much damage and work your way towards your form faster. That being said, if there's only a few select matchups that you can pick the champion into, then he's just not viable for solo queue, so we're placing Kayn in the top lane C tier. So our pre-patch predictions for top lane have played out quite nicely, as moving Quinn up into the OP tier was the right choice. The Profane Hydra buffs have been incredible for Quinn, as that's the item you want to rush now instead of Static Shiv. You just have so much agency over how games play out when you lock in Quinn, because her laning phase in the majority of matchups is amazing, and if you get an early lead, then shoving side lanes in quickly with your Profane Hydra and then looking to rotate with R for flanks sets you up really nicely to impact the rest of the map. Rumble and Singed were both nerfed for this patch, and the amount of power they lost is what we expected going into the patch. Rumble is still in a much better spot than he was a few patches ago, as he remains placed in the top lane A tier, and then Singed is still a great pickup as well, being placed in the S tier. As expected, the Aurelia buffs didn't do anything to increase her power level, so she remains in the A tier. AP builds have not popped up at all on her either, so it looks like those AP ratio buffs were very irrelevant. So breaking down the off-meta junglers who were buffed for this patch, Vayne and Neela are performing very poorly, so we wouldn't recommend touching them at all. However, Morgana and Set are in much better spots. For Set, it's really interesting looking at his success based on what elo bracket he's being played in, because for Plat and below, he's hovering between a 48 to 50% win rate, which is not that bad at all. When you jump up to the higher ranks though and reach Emerald, win rate falls off a cliff. The sample size is very small though right now, so it's difficult to get a super accurate read based on statistics as to exactly how powerful Set is, but he's definitely looking like a better pickup in the lower ranks. If you want to try Set jungle for this patch, then making sure you're running the optimal clear is going to be vital to find the most success on him. So Shapeshift, who's well known for crafting the most optimal clears for all junglers, has an updated clear guide for Set on our website to help you out. The one jungler who we are moving down the tier list for mid-patch is going to be Master Yi. Yi lost some base health, and then his Q on hit modifier got nerfed, going from 75 to 65%. This has resulted in Master Yi's win rate dropping about 1.5%, so it's hit him a bit harder than expected. Despite the nerf to his Q on hit modifier, Kraken Slayer is still the best rush item on the champ, as it continues to outperform Blade of the Ruined King. So nothing has changed build-wise for Yi due to these nerfs, as on hit is still better than crit, but he's in a weaker state and is being dropped into the A tier. Moving on to the jungle tier list now, nothing changes in the OP tier, as Volibear will continue to lead the way. Neela and Vayne are looking like absolute hot garbage in the jungle after their buffs this patch, so we're honestly just going to remove them from the jungle tier list completely, as they are even weaker than all the C tier picks. There were some comments asking about Qiyana jungle in the pre-patch tier list as to why she's not placed in the OP tier right now, and it's mainly due to the champion's inconsistency in performance for the lower ranks. In the elite tiers of play, Qiyana is very powerful right now, and you could argue a spot in the OP tier, but for Emerald and below, she's mediocre at best, holding a 46 96% win rate in gold, silver, and bronze. So factoring in all the ranks with Qiyana being OP tier level in high elo and C tier level in the lower ranks, we meet in the middle and have her placed in the A tier. A new addition to the mid lane tier list for 25.17, fresh off his buffs, is going to be Kog'Maw. So AP Kog'Maw mid is actually in a viable spot now, sitting just below a 49% win rate. So nothing too crazy at all, and not a top tier pick by any means, but performing at a level to where he's worth considering if you can pick him in the correct spots. Being a champ who lacks any sort of mobility or strong self-peel tool, blind picking Kog can be very risky for solo queue. If you first pick AP Kog and then the enemy team locks Jarvan, Camille, and Zed, well then you're just not going to be surviving in fights. If you can pick him into lower mobile enemy comps, then the champ can feast though, as you'll be able to out those champs really easily in fights and get a lot of value from your AoE poke. For the build on AP Kog, it's a Luden's Rush into Archangel's 2nd and Rabadon's 3rd as the core you'll want to aim for. For Kog'Maw's tier list placement, we'll be adding him to the mid lane B tier for 25.17. So for mid lane in 25.17, there are a few champs worth noting who saw a nice spike in power that aren't really being played all that much. Vel'Koz mid is quite underrated right now, as he likes to build Horizon Focus, and with the item buff for this patch, his 2-item spike has become stronger. Morgana mid is absolutely incredible as well, and one of the best mid laners if you're looking for something that's easy and powerful to play. Of course, there's Quinn mid as well, who has been a great mid lane pick all season long, but won't really ever gain much traction play rate wise unless we were to see her picked in pro. Quinn mid has literally had over a 53% win rate for the majority of the season, so despite it never catching on a ton, you could argue she's been the best mid laner. Ziggs mid has been overshadowed by bot lane for a while now, but over the past few patches, he's actually back to finding some good success as a mid laner due to those buffs from 25.14. We honestly just forgot about Ziggs mid due to him being such a niche pick, so we should have had him in A tier for the past few patches, but we're finally moving him up now to his deserved spot. So in the pre-patch tier list, we noted that Yunara would be getting some bug fix changes that could end up swaying her power level, but now that the changes have been issued, it's not looking like she's lost much power at all. With over 100,000 Kraken Yunara games played in 25.17, the item still has a slightly higher win rate than that of Yuntal or Blade of the Rune King, so itemization on Yunara does not seem to have changed. Misfortune was the only ADC who got buffed for this patch, and she's actually gained slightly more power than anticipated. MF gained 2 base AD, and we were thinking it would lead to about a 0.5% increase in win rate, but it's actually been closer to 1%. So we're going to give Misfortune a push up the tier list for mid-patch, going from A into S tier. With MF moving up, S tier is becoming a little too crowded, so we're going to be dropping Lucian and Kai'Sa down 1 tier each, as they have been right on the fence between A and S in recent patches. We're also changing up how the bottom of the ADC tier list looks, as Kalista will now be the only champ placed in the C tier. There's quite literally no other ADC even remotely close to being as bad as Kalista for solo queue, so it makes sense that she is in a tier of her own. We could honestly just remove Kalista from the tier list completely. She's actually that bad right now, but her play rate is still above 1%, so unless that drops below 1%, we'll just keep her down alone in C. So after receiving buffs for 2 patches in a row, Riot has turned Morgana into a powerful champ for 3 different roles, as she's back to being a top tier support once again. W damage going up in the early game was a nice buff for support Morgana, because you only put 1 point in the spell, so more damage at rank 1 is great. If you're thinking about picking up Morgana support for this patch, but don't know when she's most optimal, let's talk a bit about that. With Morgana W damage going up, a really oppressive lane that you can pick is Morgana with Sivir. Morg W combined with Sivir W and Q gives you the ability to acquire priority in the majority of matchups, and once you have the enemy pushed in under tower, it's so difficult for them to do anything at all. If you are against a melee engaged support and they try to all in, Sivir has her spell shield and Morgana has hers, so it's so difficult for melee engaged supports to actually punish you for being shoved up in lane. Of course, the Caitlyn Morgana lane is a classic, so Kate and Sivir are definitely the 2 ADCs you'd want to pick Morgana with the most for 25.17. For Morgana's tier list placement, we're moving her up from A into S. So with the buffs that Senna received for this patch, we have seen more players gravitate toward running Enchanter builds again. Echoes of Helia as a rush has doubled in play rate relative to last patch, and it's actually performing even better as well. Usually, if you see a build gain in play rate, you'd expect the win rate to suffer a bit due to more inexperienced players trying the build, but since that has not been the case, it's a good indication that the Enchanter builds are actually very good now. So if you're looking to try out Enchanter Senna in 25.17, then here's what your setup should be looking like. For the core build, it's an Echoes of Helia rush into Moonstone 2nd, and then Dreammaker is the item upgrade. As for the rune page, you want to take Aerie for the Keystone rune, and then Resolve for secondaries. So Senna has gained over 1% win rate from her buffs this patch, and is back in a pretty good spot for solo queue, so we're promoting her up an additional tier from mid-patch, going from B into A tier. So the big theme over the past couple of patches has been the rise of ranged supports and the fall of melee supports. Senna, Morgana, Vel'Koz, Vel'Koz, Xerath, Brand, and Zyra have all become stronger recently, some due to direct buffs and others due to indirect buffs. At the same time, we've seen champs like Rell, Alistar, and Braum lose power, so the meta is really starting to skew towards enchanters and mages. For the first time in a while, Brand, Vel'Koz, and Zyra are all placed in the S tier, so these carry supports have made a big comeback in recent patches. So if you don't have a mage in your champion pool for support right now, then it's definitely worth considering. Even if you just pull them out when paired with longer range catch ADCs like Ashe, Varus, or Jhin, it's going to suit you really well, as those long range duo synergies are so powerful for solo queue. Alright guys, one last thing, our rank up guarantee is insane. It's like signing up for the gym and getting a refund if you don't get ripped. That's how confident we are in SkillCapped. We obsess over making the best guides with top players, rigorous testing, and top tier video editing to make your climb easy. If you're ready to level up, visit SkillCapped.com and see the difference. So there you have it everyone, that was a quick update to the solo queue tier list for every single role as we reach the midway point of 25.17. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.